And I'm going to leave Mr. Hamilton for last because he works within the Secretariat. And we'll start with Dr. George Brathwaite, who is a lecturer in political science and international relations. For you, Dr. Brathwaite, what have been the landmarks of our regional integration process in the last 50 years?
That's a very interesting question to start with. Um, I think fundamental to all of this is what we've seen culminating over the last few years, and that is our propensity to be able to collaborate, cooperate, coordinate, and get things done. I think that has been a fundamental that has been fundamental in the scope of things as we advance and evolve since the years of independence. Uh, of course, sometimes it becomes problematic, but the reality is that we've recognized that it is to our benefit and to our advantage across the region for these symmetries to exist, more or less. So for me, it has been the deepening of cooperation, and even against some difficult times, that we've been able to stand together and be one of the strongest and long lasting regional bodies of sovereign nations across the world. We have maintained it, and I think that is to our benefit. It, it's a lot of indigenous effort. Of course, we need more funding. We need more buy-in. And I will speak about the buy-in when we speak about some of the problems and issues.
That
Because,
have arisen. Okay. And over to
yeah,
you now, Ambassador Commission.
Well, I will take a slightly more philosophical approach to complement what George has said. Basically, on one level, what we are doing with CARICOM is rebuilding our unity movement that suffered such a tremendous calamity, catastrophe in 1962 when the West Indies Federation collapsed. So all of the hopes and dreams that our people had had since from the period of the abolition of slavery, um, since the development of our labor movements in the 1920s and 30s, the dreams of a united, federated Caribbean political union, all of those dreams and aspirations collapsed in 1962. And what we have been doing since then is kind of incrementally, not starting with a new federation, a new political union, but going about it in a very incremental way, starting with simply a free trade area, PRIFTA, Free Trade Association, and then evolving it to a common market and functional cooperation and coordinated foreign policy and in more recent years, a single market and single economy. So we are building our way back to the structure that collapsed in 62. However, on another level, we are even going beyond that, because what we have done over the last 50 years of CARICOM is really built a system of brotherhood and solidarity among our nations, among our heads of government, among our ministers of government, indeed among our people. And that is important because if we look at what caused the collapse of the Federation in the first place, it really had its roots in the very competitive, divisive environment that we had during that colonial era, when we were pitted against each other, as colonies competing with each other, competing for the sugar market, etc., with
Okay.
links to
And
London.
if we can go to Salas now.
Thank
He
you.
sits right in the seat of the Secretariat. You would have been there, not for the full 50, but I believe that for as long as I've known you, you have been in some way associated with CARICOM. And for you, 50 and counting, what have been some of the major pillars you would say that the bloc has been formed on and has managed to complete in terms of bridging that regional gap?
Thank you, Wendy, and good evening to my colleague panelists as well. It is a pleasure to be here on the People's Business. Not as old as you were saying I am, Wendy, but yes, I have been at the CARICOM Secretariat for at least over 20 years. If I had to answer, I would say it would start from the 1973. Ambassador Commission went even further back. But if you're looking specifically at the 50 years, I would say that Treaty of Chaguaramas that was signed by those four independent countries, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Jamaica, a significant step. And if we look at going forward in the 70s and 80s, that shift towards a CARICOM single market and economy that was heralded by the Grand Anne's Declaration back in 1989. And incrementally, that is the phrase that Ambassador Commission has used. I will share it as well. Building out the institutions. And I think you feel CARICOM via the institutions as it relates to functional cooperation. So we're talking about the Caribbean Court of Justice, CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, CXC, etc., CAFA, etc. And I would pinpoint those as some of the landmark steps over the last 50 years that would have shown us success on the journey for CARICOM. And when you think of where we started, it is significant. 50 years is a significant milestone. And when you look at the activities, when you look at the institutions, the glass is more than half full. It is a journey, and I think we can look back and reflect that there is hope for success in continuation.
Okay. Well, I am happy that you pointed out that there is hope for success in this journey, because there are a number of areas that people would have wanted to see develop more. And I want to look at the issue of the single market and economy. I'll start with you, Dr. Brathwaite. There's some who might believe that this particular aspect of CARICOM should be a lot further along. We should by now be trading with a single currency within the region to make trade for us easier amongst ourselves, and also in terms of being able to access more trade internationally, and for them to see us as a more formidable economic force as a bloc.
I hear the arguments, and such arguments have merit. But what one ought to consider seriously, we've had a private sector that has traditionally not really have been the drivers of these economies to that extent, and that in itself is a problem, because it is in the area of trade and commerce that you really need to have the gelling, to have the cross fertilization ideas, to have so many things coming together. And the governments of the region have been pushing more and more of that. We are seeing it realized. We talk about production integration and becoming more competitive to be able to compete with a world that has not treated the Caribbean region well, and that we have had to demonstrate that we have the capacity for pushing for that international primacy. So the arguments against have merit, but I think it is that hope that has held out for 50 years. It is that hope that still instills in us that there's a sense of purpose and unity, and that with the right cogs coming together, we can move forward. And the private sector we are seeing is becoming more and more resonant of that idea, the whole fact that there should be more in terms of in the industry, manufacturing, create the various creative industries, utilizing the technologies, and with the freedom of movement now for all, it actually invites greater commerce in the region, and so that the private sector can be not just a major benefactor but a major investor in getting this regional integration working.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm sure Salas can tell us a bit more about the private sector arm, which the CARICOM Secretariat does have, and which is looking to align businesses a lot more with each other and to be able to, have that connection, and perhaps even in terms of sharing of services. If we all are manufacturing the same thing, they say there's unity and strength, but if we're able to produce more together as a unit, then our chances of entering the foreign markets is a lot stronger. Salas.
That was the intention. That is the intention of having the CARICOM single market and economy. The CARICOM private sector organization, though, is not an arm of the Secretariat, but it's an organization by itself, and it has a seat at the table to engage the conference, to engage the community, to help as the driver of integration. The other one, of course, would be labor. So apart from the administrative arm, the CARICOM Secretariat and the member states, you need to have the private sector as well as labor to be a part of the process. To go back to your earlier question, though, sometimes we like to see things done quickly, and we have to reflect that we are sovereign states, with the exception, of course, of Montserrat, 14 sovereign states. And that in itself means we need to go back to the member states for the decisions to be implemented nationally. CARICOM CSME is not something out there in the region. It is here in Barbados. It is there in Trinidad and Tobago. The decisions that you make, it's not at the CARICOM Secretariat. It is the member states' decisions. And unlike the European Union, where you have the supranational process, it is not the same here in CARICOM. So sometimes, because of that thrust, things seem to be a little bit more delayed. But if you look at even in the CSME, and George spoke about it, the process not being as quick as some persons would expect, you have to get it right. And you have to look also at the capacity of these member states in implementing the CARICOM single market and economy. And finally, I would say, we have to use it. We have to exploit it. We have to think beyond our borders. We have to think as a set of young students leaving school every summer. Each member state would have a cadre of youngsters seeking employment. Just like the private sector, you have to see the open borders and the markets to be exploited. And thus, that is how you get the benefits of the CARICOM single market and economy.
Okay, if we can go to the ambassador now, because we're talking about the private sector's role, but you are aligned to the heads of state. You work with them on a regular basis in terms of looking at some of the policies within CARICOM, how they're carried out. You're at all of the special meetings, etc. For you, where does the main thrust lie, or who do you think should be helping to push the regional process more? Is it more so the private sector should be playing a greater role, or do you think the government should just be there monitoring it as it goes along?
No. In developing countries, the governments have to play a galvanizing, pace-setting role. Your assumption is quite right, Wendy, that there was too much lethargy in the CARICOM leadership in putting the CSME in place. I mean, let's be realistic. We had the Grandance Declaration with 1989. We then had the West Indian Commission. We had the proposal for a CSME since the early to mid 90s. It took too long to even you know, getting to the starting line. Um, and then we went through a period of lethargy where the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on the CSME didn't meet for had one meeting in 7 years, right? So let us not just make excuses. There was lethargy. Um, when Prime Minister Motley came on board in 2018, she brought a new sense of urgency. As you may know, Barbados has lead responsibility for the CSME. Prior to Prime Minister Motley, there had not been a meeting of the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on CSME for 7 years. Prime Minister Motley immediately said, "This is not good enough. We must meet at least 4 times a year, every quarter." And we really started to move. For example, the Protocol on Contingent Rights, which is the protocol that has to go along with the CARICOM Skills Nationals program where people can move. And the Protocol on Contingent Rights says, what rights you have when you move. That was languishing for over 10 years. Prime Minister Motley came and with her sense of urgency, got it put in place. So, and we were really moving 2018, 2019. Then, of course, COVID hit us in 2020. And, we took a couple of years dealing with the public health crisis that COVID is. But the good news is CARICOM has probably never been stronger than it is right now. We've come out of COVID. COVID taught us some hard lessons. And the lessons that COVID taught us really is it brought us home as to why we needed CARICOM in the first place, why
Okay.
we needed CSME. Just give me a chance to finish, please.
Okay.
And so, for example, so we have now the 25 by 25 program where we are doing agriculture and food self-sufficiency. We are now finally making a serious effort to reduce our food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. We finally, after so long, have put Suriname in place to lead on developing an industrial policy for CARICOM. So I would say we can't just give excuses. We have to admit that there was a level of lethargy in the leadership, but we are seeing signs. We are definitely seeing signs now that we have learned the lessons and we are forging ahead in a much more serious way.
Okay. Now, when we come back, we will see exactly how far we're forging. Ambassador Commishaw, as well as our other guests, Dr. George Brathwaite and Salas Hamilton. We'll take a break and we'll be right back to discuss more about CARICOM and its 50-year journey. Come out, it dropped right out. People's Business. We're talking 50 years and counting CARICOM. Now, I believe we have a caller on the line who wants to be a part of our discussion.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening to you.
How you do? Yeah. I want to. You hear me clearly? You hear me?
Yes, I'm
Hello?
hearing you. Go right ahead.
Oh yeah. I myself and a lot of my comrades and friends don't believe that CARICOM over the last many years has made very much strides, and I believe too that the leaders of CARICOM are not that strong and vibrant. And when you got a country that got 90,000 people and got a leader, he or she makes up a number. They can't got no viable policy to make the number. I think CARICOM has not demonstrated to the people in the Caribbean that they make a great lot of strides. I think that is the problem we have faced. Can you all tell the lot of strides that we have made? We have not published it in papers. Nobody here, but we hear people talk CARICOM, but nobody don't know what the strides they made. I can't say that the strides that CARICOM has made over the last 50 years that has been so good and so outstanding to the public and the people of the Caribbean. I believe that we lost the boat.
Okay. It's not my question to answer, but I believe the free movement is one of the first and most notable strides because individuals like myself as journalists can move across the region and, work freely. But I'm going to toss this first one to you, Salas. His point is that he doesn't think that as a region we have made strides that can be boasted about or that are openly visible to the average Caribbean nationals. So pinpoint for him what are some of the major strides that have been made in that 50-year time.
I would also welcome the colleague panelists to assist as well, because maybe he joined late, because some of those strides were pinpointed. Coming out of the recent pandemic, we have to speak about the lessons we have learned and how we collaborated as a community to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking about functional cooperation, let us speak about the institutions that we have, the CARICOM Development Bank, Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, Caribbean Court of Justice, the way how we have coordination in terms of our foreign policy. These are some of the tangible things that you can reference. And you spoke, Wendy, of course, to the skills regime, which we are looking towards having not skills anymore, but the full free movement of peoples across the region. And I mentioned even before then what it would mean for human resource, building the capacity of the private sector. And there are so many other areas that we can speak to in terms of the steps, the success stories of CARICOM. But I will also leave a little spot for my colleague panelists to respond as well. I would love to hug it.
I'm going to toss to you now, Ambassador.
Oh, the CARICOM's record is undoubted. We began with the free trade regime, where when we first started with CARIFTA and it evolved into CARICOM. The first thing was the free trade, and there was a very substantial expansion in interregional trade. So that, in fact, was the first success story of CARICOM, the expansion in trade among ourselves. And we could say, well, we could have done better, but that is a significant achievement. Salas mentions the functional cooperation. The reality is that there are 17 CARICOM full institutions, and he's CXC, he's SEDIMA. When there's a hurricane in the region and our territory is devastated, it is the CARICOM institution established by CARICOM, funded by us, SEDIMA, that goes to the rescue. Then there are the associate institutions, the University of the West Indies. But that is where our young people, when they graduate from secondary school, that's where they go. That you have your CARIFESTA, you have your CARIFTA Games. So in the area of functional cooperation, CARICOM has done splendidly. Then there's the coordination of foreign policy. Yes, sometimes we don't get it right. Sometimes the big powers are able to come among us and divide us, unfortunately. But when we do get it right, we are we are spectacular and we are world leaders. So, for example, in 1972, when we took the lead in breaking the diplomatic isolation that United States and the OAS had imposed on revolutionary Cuba. We,
Cuba.
you know, we led
We,
this entire, we led this entire hemisphere in
hemisphere
20
in
in 2019 when it seemed as if there was going to be some kind of military imposition in Venezuela with the US recognizing Juan Guaido as some kind of interim president. Immediately, CARICOM sprung into action. We sent three prime ministers and our Secretary General to the United Nations to speak to the UN General Assembly. We sent our envoys to speak to the United Nations Security Council to say, look, there must be no outside intervention in Venezuela. Our region must be a zone of peace. We offer our good offices, to help negotiate a peaceful settlement. So when we get it right in foreign policy coordination, we are extremely good. The Lome Convention, it is CARICOM that led the way with the African, Caribbean, and Pacific nations in negotiating that trade agreement with the European Economic Community and then the European Union, and we can actually go on and on, but the truth is CARICOM has been one of the most successful regional integration mechanisms. And in addition to those concrete things, Wendy, there's the intangible. There's the intangible. There is the sense of agency, the sense of power that it gives us. We are all very small nation states, but when we come together, when we bring the 15 of us together, and we bring the still non-independent territories, the 5 associate members. For them, CARICOM is very important. They're still colonies, but they can be part of this regional grouping. They can gain strength and solidarity from us. So the benefits and the successes are extremely numerous.
Okay, I want to give Dr. Brathwaite a chance here in the last 2 minutes we have or so before we get to break. It might be a little less now, but
yes,
for him, for you, does the caller's point have merit?
no, the caller's point does not have merit. Indeed, it depends on which window we look through. If we look through a pessimistic window, a cloudy window, everything will look cloudy. I would rather look through from the optimistic view. I look precisely at what has happened in terms of education, health, and particularly that's why I mentioned the last 3 years when I started. Because if we never learned anything, we learned that through cooperation, collaboration, sharing information, sharing even the vaccines, we learned that we can do it. So there's a sense of purpose in terms of the indigeneity that we bring to the fore. In terms of people, the average person, if you're bold, Rihanna, regardless, whoever, we feel it. So there's that emotional response in terms of Caribbean, knowing that if nothing else, you have a security complex that will be there for you.
Yeah.
We do not necessarily know if it is United States or the United Kingdom, but we know it when it is our brothers and sisters in this region. So I think and there's something that Salas, I thought he would have mentioned. He didn't mention it. I'm going to mention it because I think it is one of the most outstanding things over the last few years. Getting young children at the secondary level, those secondary students, to have exchanges, cross-border communication with each other. That is one of the most important things. And that is how you learn about what CARICOM is doing, how it is working for the benefit of the people of the region, beginning with our children, the youth. And I think that is highly one of the most important things that we've achieved in the last 50 years. The fact that we can sit down and break bread together, even though we may come with different worldviews, but in the end, we recognize that we are under one umbrella called CARICOM, and it is our security umbrella.
Okay, I want to thank you so much,
Wendy,
Dr. Brathwaite. We have to take a break here now. And when we come back, we'll look at some of the pressing issues. We also have a caller or two lined up. But Haiti, I want to put Haiti on the table, gents. We'll be back after the break. And we're back. We're looking at 50 years and counting of CARICOM. My guests, Dr. George Brathwaite, Salis Hamilton, and Ambassador David Commichon. Now, before we went off to the break, Dr. Brathwaite got very impassioned about all the things that CARICOM is offering. And I want to go to Salis first off here. To look at some of the pressing issues that are on the table of the Secretariat and of the grouping at this point. And one of the things that keeps popping up is Haiti. Though not a full member, they're still an associate member. And several communiques have been written asking for various interventions with Haiti.
the first thing I would have to do is to let you know that Haiti is a full member of CARICOM.
Okay.
Signed the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, and they're a full member of the Caribbean community, including the single market. So that is the first thing. Our brothers and sisters in Haiti, they are going through a significant challenge and have been doing so for a number of years. We as a community, not just the Secretariat, but yes, the Secretariat and the Caribbean community as a whole, we have to respond in ways that we can. And we have the eminent persons grouping that up to last week would have visited Haiti. I think 3 former prime ministers and the former Assistant Secretary General Granderson would have visited Haiti to meet with the stakeholders and to see how we can find solutions that are driven by the persons in Haiti, the stakeholders in Haiti, to bring our brothers and sisters on board, bring them back to a place where they can thrive, where they can be successful. Because when Haiti hurts, the rest of us in the community also are hurting. So that is the first real step that we are doing presently. We have the continued dialogue with the people and the stakeholders in Haiti that is ongoing at this moment. The feedback and the report, we are still distilling it. I'm not too sure if Ambassador Cummings Young, I am passing the ball on to you, if there are some aspects at your level in terms of that reporting that you know about.
Wendy, I think it is fair to say that CARICOM is only now coming to grips with what it means to have Haiti as a member state. Haiti was admitted to provisional membership of CARICOM in 1998 and to full membership in 2000. But Haiti came into CARICOM as a member state with a population of 11 million people. The rest of CARICOM, the population of the rest of CARICOM is 7 million. So 11 out of 18. And with tremendous developmental challenges. And I don't think that CARICOM, that we ever really worked out realistically what it means to have a member state like Haiti and how we needed to approach it. And I think we're only now kind of coming to grips with it. The establishment of the group of eminent persons is a very positive development. It is something that I personally, really push for. And Barbados push really hard for this notion that CARICOM must start to talk to the Haitian civil society. Because, at one level, CARICOM is very much a prime minister's club, and that is one of its strengths, but it's also one of its weaknesses. There's this tremendous brotherhood and solidarity among our prime ministers. That is a strength. But in a situation like Haiti's, where you have a serious constitutional and political crisis, where you have an interim prime minister who was never elected by the people of Haiti, you have that. Then you can't just be talking to the political class. You just can't be talking to the administration. You need to talk to the leaders of the civil society. You need to get to know that civil society better. And so I think that we need to give this process of the group of eminent persons time to work, but we are on the right track. We are on the right track, reaching out to leaders, not to reaching out both to the administration and to the leaders of Haitian civil society and trying to get them to talk through and work through some kind of consensus on a way forward that CARICOM could then appropriate, that we could really get behind and insist that the international community do what is required to implement it. So
Okay.
I would say that full marks to CARICOM for at least demonstrating that it is making a genuine effort now to really embrace Haiti as a full member state of the community.
Okay. We have a caller on the line, gentlemen. Good evening. You can go right ahead with your question. Okay. Seems they are not there at this point. Now, Dr. Braffett, what are your views in terms of Haiti? Is the group of eminent persons enough to assist with the crisis that these people have been in? And as Salah said, when Haiti hurts, the rest of the region hurts, because every time another natural disaster happens or some other set of uprising, I go like, will these people never have a break? And this is something I've been seeing now for years, Can we continue just to say, Haiti, I'm sorry?
No, it is more than that. The challenges are real. I don't think they're insurmountable. In the same way that CARICOM in of itself generates hope among the Caribbean people, I think it is the same reason that we can extend and suggest that CARICOM will bring hope to the Haitian people. I think what Ambassador Commission is suggesting, or certainly in terms of the eminent group going there and having discussions and hearing from people on the ground and hearing from civil society, I think that is extremely important. Indeed, to go back to a point he made in terms of the Leaders Club, I, I think if there is perhaps a shortcoming within the context of CARICOM generally, is the fact that we do not hear enough from opposition groups in a formal capacity within CARICOM. And I think these, as a political scientist, you put on your hat and you're wondering, it cannot just be poverty. It cannot just be about being struck by natural disasters. There has been a continuous breakdown in terms of civil institutions. And you can't fix it if you do not really understand what the problems are, what the root causes, what are the problems. And it is more than that. Haiti was the bastion of resistance and liberation and freedom for us in the West, and certainly as Black people in the region. So I think Haiti has a special part to play. I think CARICOM is doing the right thing in reaching out and not coming with prescribed answers before they know what are the problems and how best CARICOM in of itself as a security umbrella can bring Haiti into the fold. So
Okay.
yes, I do think that we will make progress. It will be slow, perhaps slower than how CARICOM has moved in the last 50 years, but we will make progress. There's hope.
Okay, let's go to the caller on the line. Good evening to you.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to call to support the eloquency and the way that Mr. Commission spoke about the things that CARICOM is doing, because I share the view that people have to be fair and honest when they look at the amount of things that Caribbean people have been able to do, the strides that the CARICOM have made in terms of movement and people working in different Caribbean countries freely and being able to make a living. And even with athletics, like how our Shade Williams was able to move and be groomed for greatness, I think that there's so much that you can speak of. It's even the movement of entertainers and everything out there. There's so much economic activity, and it is real unreasonable to say that CARICOM is not doing great things and not moving. And I also think that the way they go about dealing with issues, the peaceful way, is very important, not to jump the gun and get too hasty. So they're doing a great job.
Okay, thank you so much. So that's a big plug for you, Ambassador and Salas. At least we have one person who agrees that you are doing sufficient. Now, one of the things I want to look at the cooperation in is that of agriculture. And I'm realizing that it seems as though there's been the creation of some subsets within the CARICOM in terms of various trade agreements. We have Bocapondo between Barbados and Suriname. Then we have some initiatives between Barbados and Guyana. And a couple other, within the EC have their own set arrangements and so on. Salas, do you find this in any way, say, harmful to what we're trying to bring together? Is it something to be encouraged? Because I believe there is now a special area within CARICOM that I think it's 5 or more that have signed on to a particular or Ambassador could clarify it for me. If you have a set number who have signed on to a particular article, they can go ahead and begin their implementation process without it having to be the full 15 and so on.
Ambassador had started speaking, so I'll
Yes.
let him.
Okay.
It's called the Protocol for Enhanced Cooperation, and basically what it says is that any two member states that if there's something that falls within is permitted by the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, but for whatever reason, all the member states may not be quite ready to implement it. But any two, three, four that are ready can go ahead on condition that it is whatever they embark upon, that it is open to all the other member states to come on board whenever they are ready.
Okay.
Um, so that's part of the thinking, and so having two or three CARICOM member states engaging in bilateral relations to help develop projects between them, such as what Barbados is doing with Suriname on the one hand and Guyana on the other hand. All of that is extremely positive. And in fact, I am making the point that coming out of the COVID-19 crisis, which was really a wake up call for the entire region, we now have a greater sense of urgency about what we need to do to come together, to build regional industries, to build regional self reliance. Indeed, to implement the original aims and intentions of the Treaty of Chaguaramas that when we embarked upon this road 50 years ago. So even within that context, having bilateral initiatives that are going in that direction, that are building regional strength and industries, that is to be encouraged. Nothing,
Okay.
there's nothing negative about that.
We want to thank you so much for clearing that up. We will take a break, and when we come back, Salas, I will allow you to weigh in as well as Dr. Brathwaite on that particular aspect. We'll be back with the People's Business. We're back. Now, Salas and Dr. Brathwaite, I don't want you to lose out on the last discussion we were having, but we do have a caller on the line. So if you could make your input to what Mr. Commichon, Ambassador Commichon had to say a little briefer so we can continue.
I will be very brief. It is a conference decision, and it's really to allow conference of heads of government, and it's really to allow those member states who are ready to move to do so and to have the process speeded up a little bit more. So you have at least 9 persons, 9 member states who have signed at the moment, and it is to be ratified by all. And that is where we are at this moment. The heads have agreed to it. It's a conference decision to speed up the process a little bit more in terms of regional integration.
Okay, Dr. Brathwaite?
And similarly, I'd be very short. I would just say that if you have initiatives that can ignite, that can become facilitators in their own right of the larger regional body. I said, go right ahead. Indeed, you mentioned agriculture and food and security, food and nutrition security are almost on our tongues in our popular discourse. But I wonder how many persons within Barbados or even across the region recognize that right now Barbados is chairing the International Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. And these are important cogs that the information has to be um, disseminated across the region because we have an opportunity now to play a major role, and particularly in reducing our food import bill, not just in Barbados, but across the region.
Yep,
It
because
has burdened us for too
we're
many years.
moving to 25 by 2025. So I guess the best way to get there is together. Good evening to you, caller.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening to the host. Good evening to the panel. Yeah, I'd just like to put three quick questions to Ambassador Commission, please. Um, Ambassador Commission, your zeal and enthusiasm regional integration movement is admirable. But given our peculiar history in Barbados and our burdensome legacy of intergenerational dysfunctionalities, don't you think that we should prioritize healing our internal traumas? One. My second question, our founding father, the Honorable Errol Walton Barrow, advised ordinary Barbadians that if they wanted justice, they should keep out the law court, which is a stinging indictment on our judiciary. I want to know how the regional organs can be engaged to promote transparency, accountability, and the fight against corruption right here in Barbados. And my final question, Ambassador Commission, do you think that the family of the late Selwyn Knight, who was murdered at Bank Hall, really are concerned about...
Okay. I'm not too sure what the last question was about, but Ambassador, go right ahead and respond to the first two, if you can.
I think what this caller needs to understand is that in many respects, Barbados is like the godfather of regional integration. I mean, you can go way back. That's why I started. I started with the abolition of slavery, the post-emancipation period. Our national hero, Samuel Jackman Preston, he was an architect of something called the Colonial Union of Colored People right after the abolition of slavery. And the whole idea was that these newly freed black people in Barbados and other Caribbean territories now needed to come together in a colonial union of colored people to develop strength, to make their way in this new world that they were inhabiting. And you can go right through the ages. I mean, Sir Grantley Adams, the only prime minister of the federation, the, the speaker of the Federal House of Assembly, Erskine Ward, the president of the Federal Senate, Dr. Arnold Cato, from Barbados, Errol Walton Barrow, the role that he played in after the collapse of the Federation, building of Carifta, being a founding father of CARICOM, Fred Cozier, the first Secretary General of Carifta, Dr. Curly King, and I mean Owen Arthur, the basically the architect of the CSME, and we can go on and on. So to suggest that somehow Barbados should simply focus on its own internal issues and not on the wider regional context is totally ahistorical. In fact, Barbados has always seen, from the very beginnings of that post-emancipation period, Barbadians have understood that we are part of a larger regional family, and that there's everything to be gained by playing our rightful role in helping to build this regional nation state, this regional economy. So I really don't know
Okay.
where the caller is going with that sentiment.
All right. I think we have to get some parting shots now from our other panelists because time is running out on us. But Salas, I want you to bear in mind that when you respond, I want you to look at some of the Secretariat's short and major long-term goals at this stage. Okay, so I'll come first to you, Dr. Brathwaite, for your parting shots in terms of CARICOM's 50 years and getting it toward another 50.
I will start where Ambassador Commissioner ended. Indeed, I know when Alpha spoke about it, certainly before he died, the Prime Minister Motley has spoken about it, other Prime Ministers in the region have spoken about it. But the fact is, we have drifted far away from the insular nationalism that pervaded Caribbean society.
Okay.
And now we are seeing the essence of cooperation.
Okay.
In saying that, we need to ensure that there are continuous flows across the region in terms of people, services, the various industries, information. And once you can get these things flowing across the region, it means that you're becoming more transparent and you're cutting down on any sense of corruption that the last caller may have mentioned. And I think CARICOM in of itself, as I said, it's a security umbrella, a security complex, and it is in having the strength of your institution and continuing to strengthen them that makes the region work.
We have to let Mr. Hamilton in here quickly for our last 50 seconds before we have to wrap up. Salas?
Wendy and colleague panelists, and of course everyone who is viewing us, it's a work in progress, and we will never have enough time to speak to all of the things that we are doing at CARICOM, or as you want, the CARICOM Secretariat. We have not yet addressed the response, the leadership that CARICOM is given in terms of that response to climate change. How can we finish without taking kudos for how we are handling the response to at COP27, etc. Our CARICOM energy policy, you speak about what are some of the things we have to look at in terms of moving forward. Yes, there are issues, and we can immediately speak to transportation across the region, and we must speak about our multilateral air services agreement and how much work is needed to overcome our transportation challenge.
Okay.
And I know I have how many? 20 more seconds?
We don't even have that. We're actually out of time, but I'm going to let you finish your point.
We have, of course, at the last heads of government meeting, the decision that was made to have CARICOM working towards the free movement of all such CARICOM nationals within the community by the 31st of March next year. So, Wendy, I give a lot of opportunity to the other panelists because there's just so many things to say, and you will always find one or two callers who will come and say, well, there is nothing that is happening. And I thank CBC for this opportunity to share with the people of Barbados and the wider community across CARICOM, because we are streaming the things that we are doing as a region. And my final sentence, if there was no CARICOM, we would have to create it.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of our other panelists. We know full well where the ambassador stands because he's the man in the chair as our ambassador to the grouping. CARICOM 50 years and counting. I'm Wendy Burke. This has been The People's Business. Do have a good night.